Landfall decks are some of the most fun decks to play in Commander, but what makes them even more fun is when the lands come from your opponent's deck. Hey everyone, my name is DJ. This is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and today I want to talk about Smeagol Helpful Guide, the new Lord of the Rings card that steals your opponent's lands and gives you tons of value along the way. Let's take a look at Smeagol Helpful Guide. 1 black-green for a 4/2 legendary halfling horror. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died under your control this turn, the ring tempts you. Whenever the ring tempts you, target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land card. Put that card on the battlefield tapped under your control and the rest into their graveyard. Stealing lands from your opponent is so much fun and it's so satisfying, especially because ramp is so good in Commander. We really want tons of lands on the battlefield so that we can do more and more and more things. It does take Smeagol a little bit to get there because it doesn't just immediately tempt you. Like, something has to die. Smeagol has to be on the battlefield, and then you get that great land from your opponent. Of course, you could just pack this deck full of ways for the ring to tempt you. You don't really need my help building that deck though. There'll be a deck list down in the description, but it's basically just like full of themed cards, and it's gonna be really fun to play. It might just feel really one note where you're just like speed running through the ring tempting you, and that's all the deck does. And so I'm interested a little bit more about getting that sacrifice trigger and making sure that I get value out of each land entering the battlefield. That way the deck works all on its own without Smeagol, and then when you incorporate Smeagol into this Landfall engine, then it gets even better as you start sucking lands from your opponent's deck. Oh, it's going to be so great. So Smeagol wants things to die. Let's get things into our graveyard. I think one of the best cards that we can have is Secure Tribuilder. That is ramp on a creature that sacrifices itself. It fits perfectly into this deck and all of the different landfall synergies. I would play so many Secure Tribuilder effects in here. Let's talk about artifact and enchantment removal with Caustic Caterpillar, Haywire Might, and Canker Bloom. All of these sacrifice themselves to take out that relevant artifact or enchantment. Let's answer creature threats. Let's get an edict on a creature with a card like Plaguecrafter. Let's evoke out a Shriekmaw so that it sacrifices itself and takes out that relevant creature. Grist the Hunger Tide is so good because it sacrifices something, it kills a creature, it synergizes with your mill strategy, it creates relevant tokens that you can just throw away for that extra sacrifice benefit, and it's like a creature itself at different places in the game, allowing you to synergistically get it out. It's so good. Like, you could play a Fiend Artisan in this deck and then tutor up your Grist the Hunger Tide so that you can kill something or get that extra value. I love it so much. There's another Planeswalker I like, Vraska Golgari Queen, because this takes something out. It's that removal that you kind of need in these decks, but it's also a sacrifice outlet that helps you draw a card. We are going to want to be able to draw a ton of different cards because if we have lots of lands from Smeagol, we're going to want lots of cards so we can play more and more things. Vraska Golgari Queen is going to give us that card draw along with Braid's Arisen Nightmare, sacrifice outlet, and card draw. Yawgmoth Ran Physician, free sacrifice outlet, card draw, proliferate effect, killing your opponent's creatures. Like, it just does a little bit of everything. And actually those free sacrifice outlets are going to be good because if we want to be able to turn in all of the extra tokens that we have and get value with them, then we're going to want things like Carrion Feeder, Viscera Seer, and Woe Strider. We're always going to want to sacrifice something because it might not just be Smeagol on the battlefield. We could have a Viscera Seer on the battlefield, and then we need to sacrifice a ton of insects and tokens or whatever so that we can get that draining value. Actually, let's talk about all the token producers. First, I want to talk about Jadar because Jadar is a token producer, and because they're decayed zombies, they're going to sacrifice themselves, which I like a lot. But when we come to token production, I'm going to shift over to landfall strategies because landfall is one of the best ways to produce disposable creatures. And it's going to be especially good if we get landfall off of our opponent's deck as well. So Bloodghast, it's a disposable creature. You keep getting it back. I mean, I think my favorite has got to be Scoot Swarm because this thing can just get big. If we have enough lands, and we will have plenty of lands on the battlefield, we're going to be able to double up our Scoot Swarms over and over again, get those extra land drops, put tons of things on the battlefield. Greensleeves is my next most favorite because badgers are adorable. And then let's round it out with Rampaging Baloth, Spore Mound, and Zendikar's Royal. All of these allowing us to go wide with all of our landfall and have the extra bodies that we can use with all of our other sacrifice strategies. Of course, Landfall isn't there to just give us creatures. If we're focusing on the strategy, let's supplement it by getting extra mana from Lotus Cobra, Tireless Provisioner, and Nissa Resurgent Animist. Let's also get some card draw from Tireless Tracker, the Gitrog Monster, and let's get some mana ramp from World Shaper. That's going to get a ton of lands onto the battlefield, trigger all of this landfall even more. And then we're going to get some utility from Dunedain Rangers. That's actually a combo that I'm going to explain a little bit later. And then Ob Nixilis the Fallen gets huge and deals a ton of damage from landfall. Now, if we're sacrificing creatures ourselves and milling our opponents, the graveyards are going to be just great value. So we're going to want to be able to answer our opponent's graveyards and also take advantage of our own graveyard. I think one of the best things to do is reanimate creatures. So I'm going to focus on spells that hit both our graveyard and their graveyard. Animate Dead, Necromancy, and Reanimate are going to be really good. I also like cards that sacrifice and return things from the graveyard, like Victimize and Rise of the Witch King. This is going to trigger a lot of our sacrifice synergies and get some stuff back. And Sam's Desperate Rescue lets us get something back to our hand, but more importantly, the ring tempts us. Smeagol's going to end up putting a ton of cards in our opponent's graveyard because they mill them into the graveyard before we get that land, and we're going to be triggering it every single turn. And so we will want to answer our opponents with cards like Deathrite Shaman and Dothy Voidwalker and maybe even Endurance. These are cards that synergize really well, have sacrifice synergies in them, but also prevent our opponent from doing something really crazy with their graveyard. But if I'm going to be dumping things in my opponent's graveyard, I'm going to make sure that they're punished for it. Sir Conrad the Grim is going to deal them damage every time a creature goes into there. And then Blood Chief Ascension, man, this card will end the game. As soon as it's up and running, any card going to the graveyard that includes through milling, they lose 2 life and we gain 2 life. Oh, the mill just destroys people. This card will take players out of the game. I also want to get things back, so Mirren of Clan Nel Toth is really synergistic. Conduit of Worlds, not just lands from my own graveyard, but I can play the relevant pieces that I need. And then Nissa of Shattered Boughs. This is just landfall recursion. It's perfect for this style of deck. So this is a value deck through and through, but I also like when my value decks can pivot a little bit and can have a combo finish. Let's take a look at that. All right, so here's how the Smeagol Helpful Guide combo works. You're gonna need 4 cards. Smeagol's your commander, so that's a reliable card. You need something that triggers landfall and creates a creature. I have Scoot Swarm here because it's gonna create a lot of creatures and it's a 3-drop. And then I also have Phyrexian Altar. People really like Visceracy or Carrion Feeder, those creature-based triggers as well. But I got Phyrexian Altar right here. And then the other key piece is Dunedain Rangers. This is 4 mana for a 4/4 human ranger with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you don't control a ring bearer, the ring tempts you. We all know that Smeagol, when the ring tempts you, will get a land from one of your opponents. What you need to do is have a disposable creature, kind of like a Scoot from Scoot Swarm or many other creature creators with landfall, and then sacrifice that creature so you don't have a ring bearer. That way, when the ring tempts you and you don't have a ring bearer and you have a disposable creature, well, you can keep creating that loop over and over again, ring tempting you over and over again and getting that mana advantage from whatever your sack outlet is, or getting huge amounts of landfall. Because you're going to be stealing every land from your opponent's deck, milling them out. One thing that's great is that this deck is going to want to have these landfall creatures in there anyways. Same thing with Dunedain Rangers. Like, it's just going to be a solid card in this deck anyways. So even though this is 4 cards put together to make a combo, it's a pretty free include. One of the great things about this deck is how customizable it can be. You can go a little bit heavier into landfall and make this more of a landfall deck with Smeagol at the helm. Or you can go more into sacrifice, aristocrat style, or you can again go like the ring tempting you. If you've decided to include Nazgul in your deck, then Bloodbond March is going to be a must play in this deck because the synergies are fantastic. Bloodbond March says if you were ever to play a spell, then you get all of the rain from your graveyard straight back on battlefield. Most of the time in Commander, as a singleton format, it's completely useless. But if you're playing 9 Nazgul and you play one and then suddenly you're returning 3 or 4 or 5 from the graveyard starting on the battlefield, every one of them triggering together, we know how good these do in multiples. Man, it's going to be such a fun experience. Seriously, lots of different directions that you can take it based on your playgroup, based on what you want. It's really, really customizable, and it's going to be good because ramp is in there and card advantage is in this deck. It's just built into this strategy, and that's what makes it really, really good and robust. If you're interested in getting Lord of the Rings cards, make sure to check out Cool Stuff Inc. They're the sponsor of the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and if you use the coupon code JUMBO5, you're going to save 5% off your order. Go ahead and get you a Smeagol. Thank you to my patrons. Thank you so much for watching, for liking, subscribing, all that good stuff, and have a great one. Bye-bye, everyone.